Michael Sullivan stared at the wine glass, his world unraveling in real time. 40 years of marriage crystallized in that single moment. Eleanor's manicured finger sliding something into his drink when she thought no one was watching. The restaurant's warm lighting now felt harsh, exposing truths he wasn't prepared to see. His hand trembled beneath the white tablecloth, wedding ring suddenly heavy as lead. Memories flashed. Their first dance, Sarah's birth, the house they'd built together, all recast in shadow. The anniversary toast waiting to be spoken stuck in his throat. Have you ever felt that sickening moment when trust shatters? Share your story below. Like if this betrayal hits close to home, follow to see how Michael survives what comes next. He caught his father-in-law Walter's gaze across the table, the older man's knowing look confirming what Michael's architect-trained eye had observed. Eleanor, his wife of 40 years, was trying to kill him. Michael Sullivan studied the curve of his wife's hand, 40 years of marriage allowing him to recognize every gesture, every subtle movement. Something wasn't right. The crystal wine glass caught the restaurant's warm lighting, momentarily blinding him to what his architect's eye had first detected. Eleanor's manicured finger discreetly sliding along the rim of his drink when she thought no one was watching. His heart stumbled in his chest. The anniversary dinner around him continued. His daughter Sarah laughing at something her husband said, Jane's usual cold stare from across the table, waiters delivering appetizers with practiced flourish. But for Michael, time slowed to a painful crawl. Memories cascaded through his mind. Their wedding day, Eleanor in white, the birth of their daughter, the house they'd designed together, his blueprints and her decorating creating a perfect whole. Now all of it felt like elaborate staging, not possible, not Eleanor. His hand trembled beneath the white tablecloth, the gold of his wedding band suddenly heavy as lead. 40 years. The weight of it pressed against his lungs, making each breath shallow. He maintained his smile, decades of client presentations teaching him to keep composure while his mind raced through possibilities, each more devastating than the last. The wine in his glass shimmered red as blood under candlelight. The anniversary toast waited on Eleanor's lips, her eyes watching him with what he now recognized wasn't anticipation, but calculation. Michael caught his father-in-law's gaze from across the table. Walter's slight nod confirmed what Michael desperately hoped was paranoia. The older man had noticed too. "Is everything all right, darling?" Eleanor's voice carried practiced concern, her hand reaching for his with familiar affection that now felt like a stranger's touch. "You look pale. Just a bit warm in here." The lie came easier than he expected, his voice surprisingly steady while his world collapsed inward. Michael's fingers fumbled with his napkin, deliberately dropping it to the floor. Heart hammering against his ribs, he reached down, using the moment to switch his wineglass with Jane's beside him. The movement was quick, precise, skills honed through decades of detailed architectural work, serving him now in ways he never imagined. He raised his water glass instead, clinking it against Eleanor's proffered wine. "To 40 more years," he echoed her toast, watching her momentary confusion at his untouched wine before her practiced smile returned. The piano music that had seemed romantic minutes ago now felt discordant. The melody of their wedding song twisted into something ominous. The restaurant's familiar scent of garlic and butter turned cloying, nearly choking him as he pretended to enjoy the celebration. "You should try the wine, Michael. I selected it specially." Eleanor's voice carried an edge he'd never heard before, or perhaps had simply never recognized. Michael nodded, watching Jane sip from what should have been his glass. His architect's mind, trained to notice inconsistencies, to catch flaws in design before they became structural failures, now pieced together subtle patterns from recent months. Eleanor's sudden interest in his life insurance policy, her unexplained absences, the whispered phone calls. Across the table, Walter's eyes never left Eleanor's face, watching with the wary gaze of someone who had harbored suspicions for longer than Michael could imagine. "Who's ready for cake?" Eleanor asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Minutes stretched like hours as Michael maintained his facade, nodding at appropriate moments while his mind calculated every possibility. The anniversary cake sat untouched on a side table, 40 years, written in elegant script that now seemed to mock him. He watched Jane sip from the poisoned wine, his stomach knotting tighter with each swallow that confirmed what he'd witnessed. "Remember our trip to Tuscany for our 30th? Eleanor's voice pulled him back, her hand touching his with familiar intimacy that now felt like a stranger's caress. "We should plan something similar for next year." "That would be nice?" The words tasted like ash. Next year, as if she'd planned for him to be there. Michael focused on his water glass, avoiding the wine entirely despite Eleanor's increasingly pointed glances. He spoke of their grandchildren, his voice surprisingly steady while discussing future holidays he now understood he wasn't meant to see. His architect's mind, trained to envision complete structures from mere blueprints, now constructed a terrible reality where his wife of 40 years had planned his death over anniversary champagne. 30 minutes into dinner, it happened. Jane's fork clattered against fine china. Her hand flew to her throat, eyes widening in confusion, then panic. The wine, his wine, spilled across the white tablecloth like spreading evidence. Napkins quickly stained crimson. "Jane?" Eleanor's voice registered genuine shock as her sister began to gasp. "Jane, what's wrong?" Chaos erupted around them. Sarah's husband rushed to Jane's side, his medical training taking over. "She's having trouble breathing. Someone call an ambulance." Michael stood frozen, watching the scene unfold with horrible certainty. Eleanor's face cycled through emotions. First confusion, then realization. Finally, carefully constructed concern that didn't reach her eyes. That momentary flash of recognition told him everything. She had expected him to be the one choking, not her sister. "She must have a food allergy," Eleanor explained to the gathering crowd, hands fluttering ineffectually. "She's always been sensitive." Waiters rushed forward with water. The manager appeared asking urgent questions. In the commotion, Michael caught Walter's eye across the table. The older man gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the door. Permission to leave, understanding passing between them without words. Michael placed his napkin beside his untouched plate, murmuring about getting his car to follow the ambulance. No one questioned him. All eyes were on Jane now, convulsing as paramedics burst through the restaurant doors. As he backed away, his reflection fragmented in the decorative mirrors lining the exit. A man suddenly unrecognizable to himself, marriage splintered into jagged pieces that could never be reassembled. The cool night air hit him like a physical blow as he stumbled to his car. His hands shook violently now, fumbling with keys as sirens wailed closer. The anniversary gift for Eleanor, an expensive watch, sat heavy in his pocket, now an artifact of a life that had never truly existed. As Michael started the engine, his phone buzzed. Expecting Eleanor, he glanced down to find a message from an unknown number. "She's tried this before. Meet me at Riverside Park, north entrance. Come alone." He pulled away from the restaurant just as the ambulance doors closed on Jane's stretcher, Eleanor climbing in behind her, cell phone already pressed to her ear. Looking into his rear-view mirror, Michael realized with sickening clarity that he was fleeing not just a dinner, but his entire life. Michael drove aimlessly through familiar streets, now strange and threatening. Stoplights blurred through tears he'd held back at the restaurant. Decades-old discipline finally crumbling. His architect's mind, trained to find order in chaos, couldn't make sense of what he'd witnessed. Eleanor, his wife, 40 years. When his vision became too clouded to continue safely, he pulled into the empty parking lot of St. Mark's Church, where where they'd renewed their vows on their 25th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on him as he killed the engine, the sudden silence crushing. Only then did he allow himself to break. Deep, body-shaking sobs erupted from somewhere primal within him. His shoulders heaved against the steering wheel as 40 years of trust dissolved into nothing. The gold wedding band caught streetlight as he twisted it, a once comforting weight, now constricting. For the first time since their wedding day, he slipped it off completely, skin beneath marked paler by its absence. "Who are you?" he whispered to Eleanor's smiling face in the photo tucked in his wallet, voice cracking. The woman who'd shared his bed, raised their daughter, planned their retirement, a stranger wearing a familiar face. All lies, every moment. Recent oddities suddenly made terrible sense. Eleanor's sudden interest in his life insurance policy, her unexplained absences, whispered phone calls that ended when he entered rooms. How long had she been planning this? The anniversary dinner. Had she chosen it for sentiment or convenience? The mysterious text message glowed accusingly on his phone screen. She's tried this before. Not her first attempt. Then, the thought sent another wave of nausea through him, hands gripping the wheel until knuckles whitened. Rain began to patter against the windshield, matching the rhythm of his gradually subsiding tears. The church steeple loomed through streaked glass, a silent witness to his disintegration. He had choices to make, quickly. Going to the police seemed logical, but what evidence did he have beyond a glass switch no one had witnessed and a text from an unknown sender? Michael's fingers hovered over the phone, tempted to call Sarah, but stopped. What if Eleanor had already reached her? What if his own daughter wouldn't believe him? The isolation of his position hit him with fresh pain. Who could he trust when the person he'd trusted most had tried to kill him? Walter. His father-in-law's knowing look at the restaurant suggested he might have suspicions of his own about Eleanor. It was thin hope, but the only direction Michael could see through his shattered world. Wiping tears with his sleeve, he started the engine again and pulled away from the church. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m., less than 2 hours since his life had imploded. It felt like decades. As he turned onto Walter's Street, Michael's architect's eye caught something immediately wrong. Parked in the driveway was Jane's car. Jane, who should be in the hospital after collapsing at dinner. His foot hovered over the brake, instinct telling him to retreat, when Walter's front door opened. The old man stood silhouetted in the doorway, hand raised in recognition. Michael hesitated, trapped between retreat and the desperate need for answers. His wedding ring sat heavy in his pocket as he made his decision and pulled into the driveway. Michael approached Walter's Craftsman bungalow with caution, every step weighted with uncertainty. Jane's car in the driveway made no sense. She should be in an ambulance or hospital bed, not here. "Come in quickly," Walter said, voice low as he ushered Michael inside. The older man's eyes darted to the street before closing the door. "Eleanor might come looking for you here." "Jane's car," Michael began. "I borrowed it this morning to pick up medication. She never reclaimed it before your dinner." Walter's arthritic hands trembled slightly as he locked the door. "She's still at the hospital, as far as I know." The familiar scent of pipe tobacco and lemon furniture polish filled the living room where family photos chronicled decades. Eleanor from pigtailed child to poised woman. Michael's eyes lingered on their wedding portrait, now seeming like evidence from a crime scene. "I saw what happened at dinner," Michael said, voice cracking. "Eleanor put something in my wine. I switched glasses with Jane." Walter didn't look surprised. Instead, he nodded slowly, the confirmation hitting Michael like a physical blow. "I've been waiting for her to make a move. Sit down, son. This will take a while." The grandfather clock ticked loudly in the silence as Walter poured amber whiskey into crystal tumblers, the good ones, saved for important conversations. Moonlight streamed through half-drawn curtains, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. "How long have you known?" Michael asked, accepting the drink with unsteady hands. "Suspected, not known," Walter clarified. "For years, I've watched Eleanor become someone I don't recognize." He adjusted his glasses, hiding moisture in his eyes. "Someone more like her mother." Walter crossed to an old roll-top desk, unlocking it with a key he wore around his neck. "After my wife died, I started noticing patterns in Eleanor's behavior. Little things at first." From the desk, he withdrew a folder containing financial documents, spreading them across the coffee table like a grotesque puzzle. Michael's architectural training, his eye for detail, recognized the forgery immediately. "This is my signature, but I never signed this." He stared at a second mortgage on their home, dated 6 months prior. "How is this possible?" Walter pushed forward credit card statements showing jewelry purchases, hotel stays, and cash advances totaling thousands. "Eleanor's been systematically draining your accounts." "There's more." Michael's whiskey glass slipped from his fingers when Walter revealed emails between Eleanor and a man named David. The romantic exchanges were explicit, but the financial planning was worse. Discussions of Michael's life insurance policy and how to access his retirement funds after his accident. $2 million, Michael whispered. "She increased it last month. I thought it was routine." Walter's next revelation drove Michael to his feet, fist pounding the wall beside Eleanor's childhood photo. Her mother's previous husband died of a heart attack shortly after increasing his life insurance. There was an investigation, but nothing proven. I was too young then to see the pattern. Tears of rage replaced shock as Michael absorbed the depth of betrayal, not just attempted murder, but years of financial deception and infidelity. His entire retirement security, built over decades of careful work, had been compromised by the woman who should have protected it with him. "She's tried this before," Michael said, remembering the text message. Walter nodded grimly. 3 years ago, her business partner became mysteriously ill after threatening to expose financial irregularities. He survived, but never returned to work. "I've been watching, waiting, afraid for you, but without proof." Michael's hand brushed his bare finger where his wedding ring had been, the absence now a reminder of clarity rather than loss. "I need to record Jane's confession. If she was part of this," "She was," Walter confirmed. "Eleanor and Jane have always been in this together." As they planned Michael's next steps, the weight of his 40-year marriage collapsed into a single, terrible truth. The woman he'd built his life with had been systematically planning its end. The hospital corridor stretched before Michael like a gauntlet, fluorescent lights casting everyone in a sickly pallor. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached the nurse's station, rehearsed story ready. "Jane Reed's room," he asked, the concerned brother-in-law performance coming easier than expected. "I'm Michael Sullivan, her sister's husband." The nurse directed him to room 307, her eyes hardly leaving her computer screen. Michael's shoes squeaked against the linoleum, each step announcing his presence in the quiet hallway. The antiseptic smell, once associated with Sarah's birth, now tainted like everything else in his life, made his stomach clench. Outside Jane's room, he paused, finger hovering over the record button on his phone. Walter's warnings echoed in his mind. Be careful, reveal nothing, let her talk. One chance to get this right. Jane looked surprisingly alert for someone who had collapsed dramatically hours earlier. The expensive flower arrangement beside her bed, Eleanor's thoughtful touch, seemed grotesquely cheerful against the sterile walls. The rhythmic beeping of monitors created a soundtrack to Michael's anxiety. "Michael," Jane acknowledged, surprise quickly masked by a practiced smile. "Shouldn't you be with Eleanor? She's very upset." "I needed to check on you first," he replied, easing into the visitor's chair. "Quite a scare at dinner?" "Just a reaction. I'll be fine." Her eyes studied him with new calculation. "How are you feeling?" Recording now, capturing every word, Michael feigned confusion. "Me? I'm not the one who collapsed." "No," Jane agreed, something like disappointment flickering across her features. "You didn't touch your wine." Michael allowed vulnerability to show, leaning forward. "Jane, something strange is happening. Eleanor's been acting different. I found financial documents I never signed. I'm worried." Jane's hand unexpectedly gripped his wrist, her manicured nails digging into his skin with surprising strength. "What exactly did Walter tell you?" "Enough to know something's wrong," Michael answered carefully. The moment stretched between them before Jane's expression changed, a smile spreading across her face. "Eleanor said you might figure it out. You were always too observant for your own good." What followed chilled Michael to his core. Believing he already knew everything, Jane confirmed the entire conspiracy, the poison that would have looked like a heart attack, Eleanor's younger lover David, the plan for the insurance money. "Eleanor promised me a quarter share," Jane explained casually, as if discussing a business investment rather than murder. "After everything she got in life, the husband, the family, the house, I deserved something. My turn was coming." "How many times has she tried this before?" Michael asked, remembering the text message.
"That business partner almost ruined everything," Jane said with irritation. "Amateur mistake on Eleanor's part. Too suspicious too quickly. We learned from that. This was perfect timing. Anniversary sentiment. Family gathered. No one would question a heart attack in a man your age." Michael struggled to maintain his facade as Jane continued, detailing how Eleanor had manipulated their daughter against him for years. "Sarah was the contingency plan. If you somehow survived, Eleanor made sure Sarah would believe you were having mental issues. The guardianship hearing is already scheduled." The door opened unexpectedly, a nurse entering to check vitals. Michael slipped his phone into his pocket, heart pounding as he made small talk until she left. "I should go," he said, rising carefully. "Eleanor will wonder where I am." Jane's expression hardened. "She's looking for you. I texted her you were coming here." Her hand reached for the call button.
"She'll be waiting outside." Michael backed toward the door. "I'll use the side exit. Tell her I'm heading home to rest." He escaped down the service corridor, narrowly avoiding a security guard who looked his way with suspicion. In the elevator, his legs finally gave out, and he slumped against the wall, the full weight of the conspiracy crushing him. Not just Eleanor and Jane, but his own daughter manipulated against him. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage, and Michael stumbled out, finding a concrete pillar to lean against as tears flowed unchecked. An elderly janitor paused, concern on his weathered face. "You all right, mister? Need medical help?" Michael shook his head, unable to explain that his injury wasn't physical, but something far more devastating. His phone buzzed, Sarah calling. He answered with dread. "Dad?" Her voice sounded strange, formal, rehearsed. "Mom told me what happened. I'm worried about you." "These paranoid thoughts, the accusations. We need to talk about getting you help." "Sarah, listen. Mom says you've been acting erratically for weeks. I've noticed it too. The forgetfulness, the suspicion. It's not your fault, Dad. But we need to address it before you hurt yourself or someone else." The words struck like physical blows. Eleanor had prepared for this, had been laying groundwork for weeks. "I've filed for emergency guardianship," Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly. "It's for your own good, Dad. The hearing is in 3 days. Please come home so we can help you." The call ended with Michael frozen in place, phone clutched in trembling hand. The final betrayal. His own daughter turned against him, his legal autonomy threatened. In 3 days, he could lose everything. His freedom, his assets, his dignity, all orchestrated by the woman he'd loved for 40 years. As he stumbled to his car, Michael noticed a familiar sedan idling near the exit. Someone was watching, waiting. The hunter and hunted roles were established, and Michael, for the first time in his life, felt utterly, completely alone. Have you ever been silenced when you discovered someone's betrayal? Share your story below. Like if this manipulation feels familiar, follow to see how Michael fights against being declared incompetent while his wife plots against him. Detective Harriet Moore's office looked exactly as Walter had described it. Organized chaos that made perfect sense to its occupant. Case files stood in precise stacks on a wooden desk, bearing decades of coffee ring stains. Faded photos of solved cases lined the walls, offering silent encouragement to a desperate man. Michael sat rigid in the visitor's chair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. The fluorescent light overhead flickered occasionally, matching his fluctuating hope. "So, let me get this straight," Detective Moore said, tapping her pen against a notepad. "You believe your wife of 40 years tried to poison you at your anniversary dinner, and now she's filed for emergency guardianship claiming you're mentally incompetent." Her skepticism was expected. At 65, Michael knew how easily his concerns could be dismissed as paranoia or confusion. "I know how it sounds," he replied. Architect's precision in each word. "That's why I brought evidence." He placed Walter's file on her desk, then reached for his phone. "But first, listen to this." Detective Moore's expression remained professional as she accepted his offered earbuds. Michael watched her face carefully as Jane's recorded confession played. The subtle widening of eyes, the straightening of posture, the transformation from polite disbelief to focused attention. When she removed the earbuds, the detective was a different person. "Where did you get this recording?" "Hospital, yesterday." Jane Reed, my wife's sister, believed I already knew about their plan. Detective Moore leaned forward, all skepticism gone. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." For the next hour, Michael methodically presented his case. The financial documents showing Eleanor's systematic draining of their accounts, the forged second mortgage, the life insurance policy increase, the emails between Eleanor and her lover discussing his accident. "Eleanor has been laying groundwork for months," Michael explained, hands steadier than they'd been in days. "Telling our daughter I've been forgetful, paranoid, creating a paper trail. The guardianship hearing is in 2 days now." The detective opened her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "David Mercer," she read from the screen. "Eleanor's lover has 3 complaints of financial exploitation of elderly partners, but charges were dropped each time." She looked up sharply. "Victims refused to testify." "Or couldn't," Michael added grimly. And the afternoon light caught his wedding ring finger, the pale band of skin a reminder of what was at stake. Detective Moore noticed the absence, her own hand briefly touching a locket around her neck before returning to professional distance. "There's something else you should know," she said, turning her screen to show an old case file. "Your wife's former business partner, Richard Thomas, the mysterious illness Walter mentioned. Toxicology showed the same substance used on high-end rodent control, undetectable unless specifically tested for. He survived but suffered memory issues afterward." "Convenient," Michael said bitterly. "Make the victim seem unreliable. 40 years on this job and family still finds new ways to hurt each other," Detective Moore observed, closing her notebook with a snap. She stood, pacing to the window where city life continued oblivious to the destruction of Michael's world. "The guardianship hearing is our biggest concern right now. Once Eleanor has legal control, she could restrict your movement, access your accounts, even commit you to a facility, all for your own good." A tear of relief escaped before Michael could stop it. Someone finally believed him. He wiped it away quickly, but not before the detective noticed, offering a tissue without comment. "We need your daughter on our side," Detective Moore continued. With her testimony about Eleanor's manipulation, plus Jane's recorded confession, We can stop the guardianship and build a criminal case." "Sarah won't believe me," Michael said, the pain of his daughter's betrayal still fresh. "Eleanor's had years to poison her against me." "Let me try," the detective suggested. "Sometimes an official badge makes people listen differently." Within the hour, Sarah arrived at the station, her expression a mixture of concern and suspicion. She barely acknowledged Michael, speaking instead to Detective Moore. "My father needs help," she began, the rehearsed speech evident. "He's been having paranoid episodes." "Sarah," Detective Moore interrupted gently, "I need you to listen to something first." Michael watched his daughter's face transform as Jane's recorded voice filled the room, confusion giving way to shock, then dawning horror. When the recording ended, Sarah sat frozen, her world clearly tilting on its axis just as Michael's had days earlier. "Dad," she whispered, turning to him with tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. Mom said you were imagining things, that you'd been forgetting appointments, accusing her of stealing. She had doctor's notes. Forged, like everything else," Michael said softly. "She's been planning this for a long time, Sarah." Detective Moore placed the financial documents before her, the proof of Eleanor's systematic deception laid bare. Sarah's hands trembled as she reviewed them, recognition dawning as she saw her mother's familiar patterns. "The guardianship hearing," she gasped. "I filed the papers yesterday. Can we withdraw them?" "Already working on it," Detective Moore assured her. "But there's more. Your mother has reported your father as potentially dangerous. We have limited time before she escalates this further." As they strategized next steps, Michael's phone rang, Eleanor calling for the 20th time that day. Detective Moore nodded encouragingly. "Answer it. Let her think you're coming home. We need to control this confrontation on our terms." Michael's hand steadied as he accepted the call, architect's precision returning to his voice. "Eleanor?" "Yes, I'm feeling better now. I'll be home this evening for dinner." As he hung up, Sarah moved to his side, placing her hand over his in a gesture of solidarity that brought fresh tears to his eyes. For the first time since seeing Eleanor's hand over his wine glass, Michael felt something like hope stir within him. "She took 40 years of my life," he said, voice firm despite the moisture in his eyes. "She doesn't get one day more." The late afternoon sun broke through clouds, streaming through the office window and illuminating the scattered evidence of Eleanor's betrayal. In its harsh clarity, Michael saw not just the destruction of his past, but the possibility of his future, different than planned, but his own to determine. The conference room at the police station hummed with purposeful energy. Michael sat at the polished table, legal documents spread before him like battle plans. Detective Moore tested a digital recorder, its red light pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. "The wire is undetectable," she explained, demonstrating the small device. "It will capture everything Eleanor says." Michael nodded, architect's mind appreciating the precision of their planning. Detective Moore had secured an emergency injunction against the guardianship proceedings, but Eleanor didn't know that yet, a tactical advantage. "Remember," the detective continued, "we need her to admit to the poisoning attempt. Let her believe you're confused, vulnerable. She's more likely to reveal herself if she thinks she's winning." Michael's reflection in the window showed a man transformed by betrayal, yet standing straighter than days before. The city lights were beginning to flicker on as evening approached, marking 72 hours since his life had imploded at the anniversary dinner. The conference room door opened, and Sarah entered, her expression resolute despite reddened eyes. She'd spent the morning reviewing all the evidence, financial documents, Jane's recorded confession, the pattern of Eleanor's deception spanning years. "Mom called again," she said, placing her phone on the table. "She's gathering everyone at the house tonight for an intervention about Dad's mental state." "Perfect timing," Detective Moore noted. "She's creating witnesses for her narrative. We'll use that to our advantage." Sarah approached her father, hands trembling slightly as she straightened his collar in a maternal gesture that shifted their dynamic. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have seen through her manipulation." "She fooled me for 40 years," Michael replied gently. "You never had a chance." Their tearful embrace sealed the reconciliation, Michael's hand patting her back as he had when she was small. Sarah's shoulders shook with sobs of guilt and relief, the breaking and remaking of trust between father and daughter. Detective Moore discreetly turned away, though Michael caught her briefly touching the locket around her neck, her own family history momentarily visible through professional armor. When they separated, Sarah wiped her eyes and pulled something from her purse, Michael's wedding ring. "I found this in Mom's jewelry box. She told me you'd thrown it away during a paranoid episode." Michael accepted the gold band, its weight familiar, yet now unbearable. He placed it in his pocket rather than returning it to his finger. Some circles, once broken, could never be complete again. As Sarah reviewed her role in the evening's confrontation, Detective Moore pulled Michael aside with a concerning discovery. "We found recording equipment in Eleanor's recent purchases," she said quietly. "High-quality audio devices, hidden camera technology. She's been manufacturing evidence of your supposed mental decline for months. Conversations edited to sound confused, statements taken out of context." The meticulous planning sent a chill through Michael. "She thought of everything." "Almost everything," Detective Moore corrected. "She didn't count on your observation skills or Walter's suspicions. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, Michael. She's been planning your mental decline for months, maybe longer." The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking time until confrontation. Michael practiced what he would say, his voice breaking mid-sentence when mentioning their anniversary, the pain still fresh despite his resolve. "She took 40 years, he said finally, tears in his eyes but voice steady. "She doesn't get one day more." Sarah returned with coffee, the three of them finalizing details for the evening. The intervention Eleanor had planned, designed to establish Michael's instability before witnesses, would instead become her exposure. As they prepared to leave, Michael's finger traced their wedding photo one last time before slipping it into the evidence folder. The young couple smiling back from decades past were strangers now, perhaps had always been strangers, at least on Eleanor's part. Detective Moore would be parked nearby, ready to enter with officers once Eleanor's confession was secured. Walter would attend the intervention as requested, playing his role while aware of the true purpose. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked, concern etched on her face. Michael nodded, surprising himself with the steadiness of his resolve. His entire life had been built on precision and careful planning, skills that would now dismantle the elaborate deception constructed by the woman he had loved. Outside the station, dusk was settling over the city. In a few hours, he would face Eleanor for the first time since witnessing her betrayal, not as a victim, but as the architect of her downfall. Have you ever had to stand up against someone who tried to destroy your reputation? Comment your story of courage, like if you're standing with Michael, follow to witness the moment of truth when he confronts the woman who tried to poison both his body and his relationships. The family home looked exactly as it had for decades, yet felt like a stage set to Michael as he approached the front door. Each familiar detail, the brass knocker he'd installed himself, the porch swing where they'd spent countless evenings, now seemed artificial, props in Eleanor's elaborate performance. Sarah squeezed his hand reassuringly before they entered. The wire beneath Michael's shirt felt cold against his skin, Detective Moore's voice still in his ear. "Let her talk. Give her enough rope." Eleanor waited in the living room, surrounded by family members arranged in a semicircle. Walter, Sarah's husband James, Eleanor's cousin Marta, and two neighbors who'd known them for decades, all summoned to witness Michael's supposed mental decline. "Michael." Eleanor's voice carried practiced concern as she approached, arms outstretched for an embrace he couldn't bear to accept. "We've been so worried." Her performance was flawless, the concerned wife, the caretaker of an increasingly unstable husband. She'd dressed the part in subdued colors, makeup minimal to suggest sleepless nights of worry. "Everyone's here because we care about you," she continued, gesturing to the gathered witnesses. "These episodes of paranoia, the accusations, the erratic behavior, it's not your fault, but you need help." Michael allowed himself to be led to a chair, his chair, where he'd read bedtime stories to Sarah decades ago. Eleanor stood above him, establishing dominance in the tableau she'd arranged. "Michael believes I'm trying to harm him," she explained to the group, speaking about him as if he weren't present. "He's been forgetting appointments, misplacing things, and then blaming others. The doctors say it's not uncommon at his age." Michael caught Walter's eye across the room, the slight nod encouraging him to be patient. Sarah sat nearby, tension evident in her posture but playing her role. "Yesterday," Eleanor continued, voice breaking perfectly on cue, "he became convinced I tried to poison him at our anniversary dinner. He switched wine glasses with Jane, who had an allergic reaction. Now he's been hiding, refusing to come home." Murmurs of sympathy filled the room, all except Walter and Sarah, who waited silently. "I don't understand what's happening," Michael said, voice deliberately uncertain, inviting Eleanor's condescension. "That's why we're here, darling. The guardianship hearing tomorrow will help us get you the care you need. I'll handle everything, the house, the finances, your medical decisions. You won't have to worry about anything." The trap set, Michael sprung it with architect's precision. "Like you handled the second mortgage I never signed? Or the life insurance policy you increased last month?" His voice strengthened with each word. "Or perhaps how you handled your business partner Richard when he discovered financial irregularities." Eleanor's confident expression faltered momentarily before recovering. "See how paranoid these accusations are? This is exactly what I've been describing to the doctors." Michael stood, reclaiming the height advantage. "Before we continue, I'd like everyone to hear something." He placed his phone on the coffee table and played Jane's hospital confession. Eleanor's face transformed as her sister's voice filled the room, detailing their conspiracy, the poison that would have looked like a heart attack, the insurance payout, their plans for Michael's retirement funds. The gathered family members sat in stunned silence. Eleanor's mask slipped further with each damning word, calculation replacing concern in her eyes. When the recording ended, Michael methodically presented the financial evidence: forged signatures, hidden accounts, correspondence with her lover. Each document landed like a physical blow to the narrative Eleanor had constructed. "You were never supposed to be smart enough to notice," she finally spat, mask completely dropped, decades of contempt surfacing. "Always obsessing over details, checking everything twice. You made it so difficult." "Mom," Sarah interjected, horror in her voice. "How could you?" Eleanor turned on her daughter with unexpected venom. "You think your marriage was real, Sarah? I selected James for his medical access. You were just another tool in my plan." James stood abruptly, shock and betrayal mirroring everyone else's expressions. Eleanor's perfectly manicured hand gripped her wine glass so tightly it shattered, shards catching light like her fractured facade. Red wine stained the white carpet she'd always protected obsessively, a small but satisfying symbol of her control slipping away. "This proves nothing," she insisted, desperation entering her voice as she looked around for allies and found none. "Jane was confused. These documents are fake. Michael clearly manipulated all of you." "The police have the originals," Michael said calmly, "along with toxicology reports from the restaurant matching the substance that hospitalized your former business partner 3 years ago." As if on cue, Detective Moore knocked at the front door, which Sarah opened immediately. 2 officers followed her into the living room. "Eleanor Sullivan?" The detective's voice was professionally neutral. "We have some questions regarding the attempted murder of your husband, Michael Sullivan." Eleanor's eyes darted toward the back door, calculating escape. When she lunged suddenly, Walter, anticipating her move, stepped into her path. She collided with her father, whose sad eyes held no surprise at his daughter's actions, only long-prepared resignation. "I tried to tell you years ago," Walter said softly, as the officers approached. "Character is fate, Eleanor." Michael stood silently as the officers read Eleanor her rights, the familiar Miranda warning surreal in his living room. The woman he'd shared his life with for 40 years, the mother of his child, partner in creating this home, now a stranger in handcuffs. As they led Eleanor away, she turned one last time toward Michael, her expression no longer the loving wife, but something cold and foreign. "You would have never known. It would have been peaceful, just like falling asleep." The door closed behind them, leaving Michael standing in the wreckage of his life, surrounded by shocked family members and the evidence of 4 decades of deception. Sarah moved to his side, her hand finding his in silent support. Walter's weathered face showed the complex pain of a father acknowledging his child's monstrosity. For the first time since witnessing Eleanor's betrayal, Michael felt tears of something other than grief or rage, the bittersweet validation of truth finally exposed to light. The courthouse bench was hard beneath Michael as he watched Eleanor and Jane receive their charges. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation in his living room, yet the surreal quality hadn't fully dissipated. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and the calculated nature of the crimes. Eleanor didn't look at him once during the proceeding. The elegant woman who'd shared his bed for 40 years now wore a standard-issue jumpsuit, her carefully maintained appearance fading without access to hair dye and expensive creams. She looked older, smaller, or perhaps Michael simply saw her clearly for the first time. Outside on the courthouse steps, Walter waited, his weathered face showing the complex pain of a father watching his daughter's downfall. "Justice doesn't feel like victory, does it?" he observed quietly. "No," Michael agreed. "Just necessity." The following day, Michael signed papers selling the family home. Walking through empty rooms where he'd raised his daughter and built his marriage felt like touring a museum of elaborate fiction. Each space held memories now questioned. Had any moment been genuine on Eleanor's part? Sarah helped him pack, carefully selecting items untainted by betrayal. His architectural awards, family photos that still held meaning, the handcrafted chess set his father had made. Everything else would be sold or donated, the proceeds placed in trust for his grandchildren after restitution to Eleanor's previous victims. "Are you sure about the apartment, Dad?" Sarah asked, concern evident as they carried boxes to his car. "You could stay with us until you find something larger." "I'm sure," Michael replied. The one-bedroom apartment near the park was nothing like the spacious home he was leaving, but it represented something crucial, a space entirely his own, unmarked by deception. Walter proved an unexpected ally in rebuilding. The bond that formed between them transcended their connection through Eleanor, 2 men healing from similar wounds inflicted by the same woman. Their regular chess matches became anchors in Michael's new routine, conversations flowing easier with each passing week. She was always her mother's daughter, Walter reflected one evening on his porch, the creaking swing moving gently beneath them. "I just didn't want to see it until too late." On a crisp autumn morning, Detective Moore visited Michael with news. Another of Eleanor's previous victims had come forward after learning of her arrest. "He's willing to testify," she explained. "Says your courage in exposing her gave him strength." This unexpected legacy, helping others avoid similar fate, led Michael to Detective Moore's suggestion of speaking at the senior center about financial exploitation. His architectural training, always focused on creating secure structures, found new purpose in helping others secure their financial foundations against predators. The center director welcomed his expertise, and soon Michael found himself developing a curriculum on recognizing manipulation tactics. His first presentation drew unexpected attendance, the room filled with older adults whose attentive faces reflected 2 familiar concerns. I never imagined retirement looking like this, Michael admitted to the group. But purpose finds us in unexpected places. After the session, several attendees shared their stories, some of exploitation narrowly avoided, others of painful lessons learned. Among them, a widow named Catherine, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile, who thanked him for his candor. Most people wouldn't share something so personal to help strangers, she observed, her handshake lingering a moment longer than necessary. That evening, Michael sat on his small balcony overlooking the park. The wedding ring Eleanor had returned through Sarah remained in its wooden box, not thrown away in anger, but preserved as reminder and lesson. He had placed it there with quiet finality, acknowledging both what was lost and what might still be found. The sun set over the city, painting the sky in colors he hadn't truly appreciated in years. From his architect's drafting table inside came sketches for a community housing project, a new vision for retirement, different from but potentially richer than the one lost. Walter's words from weeks earlier echoed in his mind. The best revenge is a life well lived. Michael raised his coffee cup in silent toast to the sentiment, a genuine smile forming for the first time in months. The wooden box with his wedding ring sat closed on the shelf, no longer a daily wound but a chapter in a longer story, one where betrayal featured prominently but would not be the conclusion. Tomorrow, Catherine had suggested coffee after his presentation. Tomorrow, Sarah was bringing the grandchildren to visit his new home. Tomorrow held possibilities neither guaranteed nor poisoned by the past. Michael Sullivan, architect, survivor, and rebuilder, turned toward that future with hard-earned wisdom and cautious hope, designing the final chapters of his life on his own terms. Isn't it something, how trust takes decades to build, but only moments to shatter? You've been there, haven't you? That instant when the world stops turning, when someone you've loved for years shows you a face you've never seen before. Like Michael at that anniversary dinner, watching his wife slip something into his wine glass, 40 years of marriage crystallizing into one terrible moment of clarity. We don't talk enough about how betrayal lives in the body, the physical ache behind your ribs when you realize you've been deceived, the way your hands shake, how your throat closes up, how the floor seems to tilt beneath your feet. You've felt it too. That moment when memories you cherished suddenly take on shadows you never noticed before. When photographs on the wall become evidence rather than treasures. When the house you built together feels like a stage set where you've been the only one who didn't know the script. The hardest part isn't even the betrayal itself. It's the doubting that comes after. Did I miss the signs? Was I a fool all along? Should I have known? Those questions can eat away at you in the quiet hours, can't they? Especially when you've lived long enough to trust your judgment, to believe you know people. There's a special kind of humiliation in discovering you've been wrong about something, or someone, so fundamental to your life. But here's what I've come to believe, and what Michael's journey reminds us. Wisdom isn't about never being deceived. It's about what you do after the deception is revealed. It's about finding the strength to seek the truth, even when that truth might break your heart. It's about standing up again when your world has been turned upside down. Age doesn't make us immune to betrayal, but it does give us tools to weather it. Perspective, resilience, the hard-earned knowledge that we've survived difficult things before. You know, there comes a moment, sitting on a porch swing perhaps, or watching the sun set from a new window, when you realize that what was taken from you isn't everything you are. Your story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. There's a tomorrow waiting, different than the one you planned, but still yours to shape. Like Michael finding purpose in helping others avoid similar pain, sometimes our deepest wounds become unexpected doorways to meaning. The human heart is a stubborn thing, isn't it? Bruised and battered, it still insists on beating, still finds reasons to keep going, still, somehow, remembers how to hope. And that, my friends, might be the most remarkable victory of all.